Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Kirby Monday, so we're looking at the next issue from his Fourth World Saga. Anytime I have the original issues, I'll be pulling those out. I do have a bunch of them, but not this early on in the Jimmy Olsen run. I'm missing a few still in the early run, so we'll be relying on the Jack Kirby Fourth World Omnibus for those issues that I don't have originally, but of course, I love those original issues. The smell, the texture, the paper, the yellowing of it, all of that is awesome. So let's crack her open right away and get to where we need to be, which is with Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, issue 135, January 1971. Once again, DC has saddled Jack Kirby with a Neil Adams cover. Both great artists, but, you know, I don't know what the equivalent would be today, but for example, you know, bringing Rob Liefeld in on DC Comics to do something really cool and having Jim Lee do the covers. Now, today they would do variants and stuff, so it's not such a big issue, but why would you use your superstar artist to, you know, kind of paint over the new superstar artist creator that you just brought in to, you know, hopefully sell a boatload or shitload of comics for you? So I always thought that was an odd decision. Nothing against Neil Adams. He's a great artist. Just his and Kirby's styles are kind of, I wouldn't say opposed, but I mean, not quite in sync, I would say. So it's just, it's an odd pairing to look at a comic, maybe, you know, back in the day, buy it on the basis of this cover and then open it up to find some Kirby visuals can be a little bit jarring if you're not into that kind of stuff or you're not used to it, right? I, of course, love the Kirby stuff, and that's why we're here. Right away, I'm going to point out two things in this issue that I noticed artistically. One, Vince Colletta still inking. I mean, he's going to do a lot of the early issues, so he actually gets in a couple hundred pages inked over Kirby, and how horrible it is. And once Mike Royer comes on, how much more amazing and loyal to the pencils he's going to be. I mean, this is serviceable, and because Kirby is so strong with his visuals, everything still kind of gets across storytelling wise, but the sheer power of the imagery is kind of dampened a little bit. Coletta's still kind of applying an older school kind of inking style. Cutting corners, right? There's lots been said about Vince Colletta doing that and having assistants and stuff, but that's one thing that's really apparent in this issue. The other is I feel like Kirby's going more and more kind of widescreen and doing more and more pages, splash pages, and then, you know, pages with, like these two pages with a big panel at the top and two, you know, just 3 panels and some pretty big visuals all the way throughout. So that's kind of cool, you know. We talked about DC having the current Superman artist, like at that time, or Brent Anderson or something like that, to redraw the Superman faces to look more like, you know, the on-brand Superman of the day. So I think I talked about last review how there was a page there where everything Superman was doing, somehow his face was hidden. I felt like Kirby had found out about this redrawing of faces and kind of pissed about it, so he did a whole page where you don't see Superman's face, even though he's the main character in that scene and in the action going on. And then I saw someone, not quite sure where it was, on Facebook, one of the comic book groups, post this and you know, kind of laugh and chuckle at the fact that, you know, he drew a bunch of Superman in there, so a lot more faces to change, right? And I don't know to what degree they did. It feels like they did maybe a little bit, but it still almost could pass off as Kirby here because it's so small. I've talked about also when Superman's in faraway shots and kind of mid shots, they tend to fuck with the face less. So like, here's another good example where he's far away. I feel like that's most of what Kirby laid down. To me, that looks pretty much like Kirby's Superman, as opposed to the stuff we saw in those first 2 issues of Jimmy Olsen. Some great just Kirby tech and sci-fi characters, right? What he's known for. Oh, I'm not quite centered here, am I? There we go. I think I did that last review as well. Got to remember with this omnibus to move it around. And then we get Boom. So no matter how shitty the Vince Colletta inks, it just cannot destroy all the power and majesty, you know, that Kirby has in his pencils and his designs and his layouts and just the concepts he's laying down on the page. Super awesome splash here. And again, obviously even more of that power we get through with Mike Royer inking, which we'll get soon. But as I say, like, you know, the compositions and the exaggerating, the foreshortening, you know, the Kirby tropes, it's just, he's really kind of pushing it even more, I feel like, than when he was at Marvel, right? It evolved. Those early Fantastic Four issues, I I stopped doing, remember, because I said, man, I just can't get through them. There's so much to read and they're kind of boring and there's a lot of panels and stuff. And it's just not the kind of storytelling I'm used to, where this is right in sync and tune. It's like 70s Image Comics or something, I guess I could describe it as, right? Like leaving Marvel and then doing something completely different, your own characters that now we know you're creating all the characters, right? There's no ambiguity between, is it Stan Lee, is it Jack Kirby? So there's something similar to that Image thing in the 90s that Kirby was doing in the 70s. Obviously not to his great success, and I say obviously because history bore that out. There's lots of reasons why New Gods and these books were canceled, but yeah, just a shitty set of circumstances, I guess. You know, would have been nice to have finished it up, but what he left behind as the New Gods kind of saga is like still being strip mined by DC today. And just again, just the fantastic visuals. I feel like he's letting all his ideas pour out here in the early 70s at DC. And he's using, I'm pretty sure he just used the same, right? Splash, 3 panels, splash, 3 panels, right? Establishing the different players, I guess. And again, it's like, you know, unless when he really has to, and that's where the Superman mucking up of the face really is apparent and is just clashy and horrible. But everywhere else, right, he's got the kind of shoulder blocking off most of the bottom of his face. Here, his arms are going across his face, right? They messed with it here in the mid shot, obviously. But again, you can't, you know, bring a good king down by just redrawing the faces, because everything else is just solid. Very evocative, once again, hiding the face. I think he's doing it on purpose. And yeah, this is just an issue chock full of Kirby stuff. You know, the soldiers who kind of look the same, right? But that he moves around. You'll notice each character is like in a different position, holding the gun at a different angle from a different hand, right? Maybe one guy's left-handed, one guy's right-handed. And something like this, you know, even though it's comic books and these are still images, this creates almost like an animation of movement, right? Your mind kind of imagines them all walking, almost as if it's, you know, the animation of one guy deconstructed, right? Yeah, again, apart from the Superman face, it's just great. So what we find out on these pages is that the current Newsboy Legion are actually the sons of the Newsboy Legion, the original Newsboy Legion from the 40s that Kirby created back then. So they kind of meet up and hang out, and Superman, palling around with Jimmy Olsen, explains that this project is a vast underground complex. That's what they're kind of exploring this issue. The Harrys were grown and raised here. Did you say grown here? What do you mean? So this is kind of Kirby, you know, I don't know if you guys know this about Jack Kirby, but he was very forward-thinking. I've talked about this before. Kind of, you know, a visionary in a way. And there's a reason for that, is because he was very into, you know, Scientific American magazine, National Geographic magazine as an artist. And he would incorporate some of those new kind of technology ideas into his stories. So he's really one of the first guys in comics to, you know, the mutants concept, whether he or Stan Lee came up with it in the 60s, whatever, you know, a lot of the heroes were getting powers from radiation, stuff like that would give you cancer, really. Jack Kirby, I believe, in superhero comics in this Jimmy Olsen series, early 70s, is the first to kind of tackle powers and cloning and stuff like that, like superhero ideas through the lens of genetics, right? So he's kind of the forebearer of that in the early 70s. I don't know if any other, you know, comic book creators were working those kind of concepts into their comics. So very forward thinking. You read Jack Kirby comics from the 70s and you'll discover stuff that have only just recently happened, you know, technology wise. OMAC is a good series for that, and I'll be reviewing that, so when I get there I'll point out some examples. But yeah, if you notice the storytelling overall, right, like even this page maybe a little more classic and a higher number of panels, right? He gave us a widescreen at the bottom here, but he's really going with bigger panels, you know, more impressive images, more foreshortening, more technology. Unfortunately, excuse me, slightly ruined by still the Vince Colletta inks. I feel like we're probably losing a bit of stuff here, not quite as precise as the Mike Royer stuff. I keep saying it, but I can't wait till that pops up. Still the annoying face changes every time. And here's the thing too, I don't even find it's consistent between, like, these three all look slightly different, don't look exactly like the same Superman, so why do it? So yeah, so Jimmy Olsen is basically just kind of met up with one of his clones here, which, you know, Kirby always has a fun way of addressing these, you know, in this case, genetics issues, but like not touching so much on the morality aspect of it or where it could go wrong. At least, I'm sure not yet anyways. So he's looking into a microscope. Yes, I see them. They look like dust motes, but as they undergo intense enlargement, oh, good Lord. Yes, they're real, Jimmy. They're you, and they are in shock. Some outside agency has rifled our replica section. So there's, you know, this scientific organization here is tampering with Jimmy Olsen's DNA. And we're getting some more concepts here of the New Gods characters. We've already been introduced to Darkseid. He appears here for the second time, I assume. And it's quite clever how Kirby's going to introduce Darkseid. And maybe that's why, you know, he's a great character and he's had such lasting impact, right? Other than the other New Gods characters, he's the one who's really, if you think of the DC universe, he's the main baddie for sure. And just a great depiction of him here, that close-up, those great Kirby close-ups. And so Creature escapes that they're working on. Gets away from them, of course. Look at all these panels here. Just how much of it is just lots of hatched lines and straight lines and power effects and almost Kirby crackle here. Like, this is an example where I feel like, yeah, Coletta did that really fast and cheap and maybe had an assistant do it, but, you know, Reuter would have done every little circle and made that look really awesome and graphic. But still, the power of the figures really work. The visual shorthand for whatever this is. I mean, it almost looks like a sperm flying through space, right? Boom. Even here. Like, what is that really? All you can really recognize is arms and hands, right? Like the rest of it's kind of just a dynamic shape that's been hatched out like that. So we've got a Kirby fight scene once again. Look at how often Superman's face is obscured. I gotta feel at this point that he's doing it on purpose. Here, you know, it's like the hairline moves. He gets slightly more thinning hair, less. Like, it's just, yeah, all over the place. Like, and here, I feel because it's the monster Jimmy Olsen, they like, you know, he's got the bushier eyebrows and he's a bit more Cro-Magnon, right? Because the creature is a clone, a modified clone of Jimmy Olsen. But they kept it Kirby-ish here. I don't think they changed anything up in the face to make him look like Jimmy Olsen. Kind of funny to have a face like that with some freckles, right? On a monster. Yeah, maybe they are messing with face. I'm not quite sure. The face kind of stands out here in an odd way. I take back what I said. Who knows, really? It'd be really hard to get down to each specific shot. This, obviously, again, is not a Kirby Jimmy Olsen. This feels like most of it probably is, because it's from the back. Great Kirby tech chamber here. You know, you really start to see in the late 60s, early 70s, I guess he must have been seeing like Inca and Maya and Aztec kind of artwork and stuff, again, in those National Geographic issues. So he's got to be incorporating some of those designs here. He just kind of gets interested in shapes a lot. More so than before. And kind of leaves us off with the same composition backwards. The big panel, the two smaller panels, and then boom, introduction of the Golden Guardian, who is, of course, a revamped version of the Guardian from, again, the 1940s with the Newsboy Legion. And we'll find out next issue, I guess, more about this guy. Great shot, once again, just slightly dampered by the Vince Coletta inking, but just a great kind of send-off at the end, a dynamic send. I've never, you know, Kirby, sometimes I find a lot of his issues end with a bunch of panels because he's got to, you know, put a lot of stuff in there. And, you know, he'll have one last little panel that kind of resolves everything. This feels quite different as far as Kirby endings go. It almost feels like it's ending like the beginning, and it's kind of big and splashy. Again, like almost 70s version of Image is how I'd put it. Very cool. All right. That is it for today's review, guys. If you're still watching and you're subscribed, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. If you are not, please do so below. It only takes a quick second. It really helps us out. It helps the channel grow. Helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone, once again, have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages. cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KIngComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby. Like!